But now I'm happy also to welcome Professor Dr. Ulrich Fischer, because he will give us some insights on a topic that we have discussed within our project internal meetings, which is electronic documentation and management of production data. So also thinking about accompanying documents and so on. That's what we already covered in our wine project in the Western Balkans. That's why I think it's very interesting, and at the same time, at the same time, I'm also happy to welcome him because he's from the Institute for Viticulture and Oenology from Neustadt, which is another, he will also give us some insight, which is a wine training institute. And apart from Geisenheim, which we know very well within our project, it's nice to also give some more German institutions a chance to talk. So, Professor Fischer, please go ahead. I guess you can see the presentation.
Uli, you need to unmute you.
We still can't hear anything. But I also can't see you anymore.
Wait a minute, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I want to just thank all the speakers before. I learned quite a bit. That's very good if you are a speaker and you learn from the other colleagues. And the reason why I'm speaking at the last position is because we talked about the growing and the support of artificial intelligence of drones, how to produce better and more efficient, more sustainable the grapes. But now we also want to market the wines. And I know that you are coming from other European countries. You're very interested also in the German market. So it's good maybe for you to know how, under which kind of circumstances we are producing here. Next slide, please. This is now a slide. Yeah, this is the WineCampus in Neustadt. So we are in the middle of the fields. We have different scientific or research institutes, but we're also happy to have our own wine estate with roughly 24 hectares where we can do a lot of trials and research projects. And we offer 3 different academic programs and a vocational school, not only for winemaking and viticulture, but also for horticulture. Next slide, please. And here I show you some pictures of our meeting room where we meet with our clientele, with our viticulturists. We have excellent analytical equipment, a very much used sensory room. And of course, we can do the trials directly in our own vineyards, like here defoliation trials or something about the crop management. Next slide. And that's the last slide of our introduction. This is our very modern experimental winemaking, where we can do really precise red wine fermentations or white wine fermentations protected against any oxygen or with a temperature we really like to have. Now I would like to go on the next slide into our project, and it's called Southwest because where you see the red circle in the map of Germany, you see it's really Rheinland-Pfalz. Our state is in the southwest, but it's a small but a really nice state because it comprises about 2/3 of the German viticulture area, 6 different viticultural areas like the Mosel or the Pfalz. And so we have a very diverse partners here who are involved in horticulture, in apple growing, in agriculture, and of course in viticulture. But we also have some university in this consortium, such as the Technical University in Kaiserslautern or the university in Bingen or in other places. Next slide. The core of all our 9 experimental fields, about 4 are about viticulture, the other ones agriculture, horticulture, and so on. It's about an infrastructure, and this infrastructure is about a knowledge platform we call GeoBox. GeoBox is state-run and facilitated source of data, and these data is coming either from geosource data which is officially freely available, like the site register where which vineyards, erosion register, soil maps, site indices, and so on. Then we have a knowledge box where we have information about the water supply on the different soils, the topography, think about the steep slope vineyards at the Mosel, or other aspects, the cultivars which are planted. We have every year different, and for each producer, different time-dependent data, the meteorological data, the data about the phenological. So when is the bloom in this area, and this side? How about the diseases? We talked about it. Being very precise means I spray exactly at the right point, not too early. And next push of the, yes. And now this is freely available. Now it is very important that we have data which we do not want to share. It's our own properties, it's our own information. Next push of the button, about my wines I'm producing, about the analytical results. And here it is very important, and this is a very strong conviction of our ministry, is that these data belong to the farmer, to the wine grower, to the enologist, and not maybe to a large company like a company making tractors or making pesticides or things like this. So this is important, that this farm box is under the control of each individual winemaker, grape grower, or viticulturist. Next. And in this context of viticulture, next we are having 4 different projects. Next one, please. One is about the now go one back. I'm explaining the 4 fields here in viticulture. The experimental field number 3 is about optimization of logistics. Well, that's about, for example, what Anna was talking about. We have a connection, for example, of the mechanical harvesters, and the amount they are harvesting has to match the capabilities in my grape reception, in my pressing unit, that not too much grapes are coming in, not too little. So this is about the optimization of logistics. I'm talking in more length about these digital forms. Then management of resources like energy, like water. Here we go in more than 50 different wine estates and wineries and cooperatives. And we've developed in a different project already a very easy way to measure at different sites inside the winery how much energy is used for this process, for this machine, and so on. And then a colleague of mine is working on the digital management of cover crops. So you get information about the soil, about the water from the geobox, where you get information which are freely available. But then you're saying, well, I am an ecological wine grower, or I am doing this and this, and I would like to have, and then there is some indication what kind of cover crop and what kind of mixture you should use. Okay, next slide. What are the objectives? We would like, in our experimental field, we would like to establish a digital documentation system. You know, Europe is full of duties to document what you're doing. There are a lot of law people around who want to make sure that everything is perfect. And that takes a lot of time. So we want to do it more in a digital, more an automized way. For example, the exchange between producers and recipients. One is selling wines, one is buying wines, and you transport it. This should be done much more simple. And we would sample the data in the farm box, and then it's one push of a button, and then the forms are sent out. And our major goal is to relieve companies from the burden of bureaucracy. They should take their brain more to focus on new ideas, on more creative things to do. And the modular structure of our ideas and the geobox infrastructure, that really ensures a nationwide application. And I think this can be also applied outside of Germany in whole Europe. Next slide, please. So start first, bookkeeping at the grape reception and during the winemaking. The first thing is we have a vineyard register. here we have the vineyard name in a database, the site area number, the cultivar, which rootstock it is grafted on, the year of the planting, and of course the owner. So that defines where my grapes are coming from. Now I harvest the grapes, and now we're going through the process from pressing, fermenting, aging, and bottling. And here we have the wine register. And the first part of it is the harvest register, where we enter in what is the juice number, the variety, the vintage. Very important, is it a PGI, a protected geographic indication, or PDO, which is higher quality. How much grapes do I picked? What is the graduation in degrees of sugar or the acidity, and what is the volume? And that's what I harvested, and now I make wine from it. And I also have to do my bookkeeping. What kind of enological measures did I do with this wine? Chaptalization, acidification, or the opposite, de-acidification, fining, using chips, and so on. And so it's also for the wine control. If they come into your wine estate, they know exactly where is the current tank. This Riesling is just stored at the moment. So that's what we are obliged to do. Next slide. Now, how can we do it more on a digital way? Because if you believe it or not, up to now, everything is put into by hand, or we have a lack. We have some, of course, some software, but the softwares don't have the exit way to go, for example, to the Chamber of Agriculture to do this grape wine harvest declaration. And now in our module, we incorporate via the GeoBox the site register information, the information of the vineyard register, and the information of the wine register, and then it's put together, and then it's sent by a push of a button. What is the reason behind why do we have to do this? Next slide, or next push. We have a prescription that we cannot produce more than a certain amount of grapes or juice on a hectare vineyards. For a PDO, it's 40,000 kilograms or 10,500 liters. For the PGI, the table, Word de Pace, it's more. And now it's very intelligent because we have on the one side, we have the input. The input is how much grapes are harvested. And then when I proceed for the PDO, I'm going to the next step and I want to market the wines. Then I tell how much bottles, how much volume I'm going to market. And then there is a comparison between how much did I harvest, how much did I market, and what is the amount of hectares, and then we can prove that we comply to the maximum yield per hectare prescription. Next slide. Now we do the application for the regulatory wine quality examination, which all the PDO wines have to go through, and roughly 90% of the wines in Germany are of this PDO quality of the highest level in the European pyramid. And beside of the vineyard information, where it's coming from the wine, about the wine register, what are the properties of the wine, we also have to feed in now analytical results from a wine laboratory, which is a private one or a state-run one. So it's coming from outside. And here, again, we need certain interfaces to incorporate that and to make this digital application possible. Next slide. That's how the analog form looks like. And what's blue, that's where we get the information from the internal data of the wine register. And what is green, we get the information from the vineyard register. And while this was very often done by hand or by a typewriter, we can do this now in the future digital. Next slide, please. So talking about now the application for the regulatory PDO examination. Again, we have the data from our wine register. What is the variety? It's a Riesling. It is a dry wine, not a sweet, not a half dry wine, and so on. But we have also some prerequisites or some upper limits. So the wine is being sent to the wine laboratory, and then they do analytical results, and then they feed in, for example, what is the amount of alcohol? What is the amount of residual sugar? What is the amount of SO2? And here we have in Europe upper limits for certain wine styles. For example, 150 milligrams of total SO2 for the red wines. And this is completed by the wine laboratory. Next step, please. And now this information is fed by the internal wine register. What are the volumes behind? And now we bring the wine to the sensory evaluation part of the PDO. And this means that tasters, I will show you some slides of it, they will check for typicality and for the no defect, for the absence of any defects. And this result, which means either, oh, everything's fine, no, it's not fine at all, the wine is not okay for commercialization. Yes, it would be okay if you do this and this further treatment, or you cannot sell it at the PDO, you have to downgrade it to the PGI. This information is brought back to the wine grower, and then he knows, the wine producers, what the result is. Next slide, please. So how this is organized. The state of Rheinland-Pfalz, again, 2/3 of the German wine producer, has assigned the Chamber of Agriculture with the implementation of this official quality system. And the first thing what they do, they approve, they check private and state laboratories if they do their job okay, if the data we are coming from them, they are trustworthy and correct. Then they are checking for the formal and analytical requirements for the potential PDO, such as that the levels of total SO2 is below the legal limits. And then they do the sensory evaluation, which is different to many other European countries where it's not done. And I think that's a very good strength that we always check on a sensory level. Good, next slide. And this whole system was implemented in 1971 with, at this time, new German wine law. We are now implementing the next step of the new German wine law. But in 1971, this idea of a PDO was newly defined. And every year they check for 120,000 wines per year. Some of them represent 500 liters, others represent 500,000 liters. They check for the information on the origin, on the sensory claim. They look for the analytical compliance. They do the sensory compliance to guarantee that all the wines we are marketing are free of any sensory defects, and they are typical for the variety from the area they're coming through, for the style of wine. For example, a rosé wine is different than the Blanc de Noir. And who is doing this? This examination is done by experts, viticulture, enology, research, consulting, and so on, even some well-trained consumers. And that you can understand a little bit, I show you some pictures of this sensory evaluation in the next slide. Here, a colleague of mine who is a consultant for enology, he's testing here some rosé wines. They are blindly poured, and they use a very simple system from 0 to 5. Numbers 5 is the best. Above 1.5, you are allowed to market the wine. Next slide. Here, another place in Württemberg where they are tasting, and it's always 3 people who are tasting together. It's not one single opinion, it's an opinion of 3 colleagues. Next slide. Good. Now we finished the wines and now to market it. And most of the wines we're producing, we're not selling directly from our wine estate or from the cooperative. No, we are transporting them and we are selling them to people out in the marketplace, to wine sailors, to supermarkets. So we are transporting wine within Germany, but we are also transporting within Europe and beyond Europe within the world. And for that, we need trading documents, national trading documents and international trading documents. And if you believe it or not, they are still done in paper form. And this is a lot of work, not only for the people who have to fill in these forms, but also the people who have to control these forms. If you believe it or not, there are people sitting in the ministry who are crunching numbers, who are putting in the numbers from a piece of paper into a database, and then it's digital. And of course, we would like to help this. Next slide. So whenever grapes are sold from the producer to maybe a wine estates who need some more grapes than they produce by themselves. Or I sell some wine to a winery who is bottling the export wine and bringing it to the export. Whenever a wine is transported from the seller to a buyer, I need these trading documents, and it's one copy for the seller, one copy for the buyer, or a copy for the commissioner who facilitated this business, one copy for the transport company, one copy for the wine register at the Chamber of Agriculture, one copy of the wine control. And you can imagine that this is a lot of work, and this does not fit into our time. And with our solution, next push, we want to make it available on our smartphones, on our tablets, so that it's one push of the button, and then all the 5 or 6 recipients have this document, and this is really digital. Next slide. Here, an example of these still analog paper form, which can be fed then mainly by our internal wine register. So we have the digital data, we just have to find this interface. Next slide. And this is the international slide, looks very much the same. Okay, I would like to conclude at the end. What do we want to achieve? We want to achieve for our viticulturists, our winemakers, a one-button digital solution for these 3 major required form and documents where they interact with authorities, with other partners, with laboratories together, and that this can be read electronically, but also as a PDF. We want to feed them with external and internal sources via the farm box, and we need some interfaces. That's a little bit tricky, but we're on a good way on this. And finally, the winemakers have a full documentation, insight and control of the output of the data with confirmation by the recipients. So we as the producers, the masters, we are the authorities of our data. We don't give them out freely. It's just when we want to give them further along the road. Yes, bookkeeper and control authorities have then access to the digital forms, no paper forms anymore, no manual number crunching, no transcription errors, and of course, no time delays. Next slide. And you will question yourself, what are the benefits for me sitting in a different country than Germany? First of all, Europe has very much the same rules about some of these documents, and the harmonization is getting further and further. But I think the German PDO system is quite interesting and unique in Europe because we have this sensory assessment of all marketed PDO wines. And at least 30, 40 years ago, it was very important that the winemakers learned about the quality requirements from the market. And so this sensory assessment was a very important tool to bring the wine quality up to the level where we are at the moment. When we can link the grape and wine yield report, so the input of grapes, juice, and wine, with the approval to market the PDO wines, so the output of the wines, we allow precise bookkeeping, and we can control the compliance of the maximum yield prescription. And this maximum yield prescription are true in many other European countries, I think in all of them at different levels. And I think this helps quite a bit. And for us, it's very important that the GeoBox is providing all the official data, all the freely available data in one unit. And then the farm box is really collecting your private data of your product, and you have a control what's going out from the farm box. And I think this can be used also in the future for many other administration tasks within the framework of national duties or European obligations. And very important, we want to decrease the burden of manually done administrative tasks in a very fast digital solution. And people will have extra time for private purpose, but also to creative freedom for everybody and everywhere. And that's the advantage of digital solutions. It's relatively easy to implement at other places as well. And that's what we have in mind. Well, next slide and last slide. Now you have a picture of the beautiful Pfalz here, where we're working and living, Anna as well. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to entertain some questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this presentation and for giving hope that part of the bureaucracy, at least, will be reduced with the help of digital solutions. So I see there's already one question by Bekim. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Peggy. First of all, thank you for Mr. Fischer. It's really perfect presentation. I'm really satisfied to hear such a good things. Exactly what we do in the project. Definitely a lot of good issue, a lot of issue what we achieve some of the country. I mean, this is the main objective of our project, if I'm right, Peggy. It's really interesting also to see in practical issue, because it was planned for this year to see some of the issue related to accompanying wine register, wine controlling. Definitely, I don't have a question, because this is something which we would like to achieve all of the country, especially our ministry, because I didn't present myself, Bekim Hoxha, I'm coming from the ministry, acting Secretary General, but I'm part of working group. I'm really fascinated with this kind of presentation from Mr. Fischer. Definitely, I saw some of the issue also our country need to do to finalize and to have such a good system for the all issue related to the viticulture and wine control. Thank you.
May I, and I'm excited that there are people in your group who are very interested in the experimental fields is about making new connections, inviting other people to work together. And I'm happy that we met now and we keep in contact, that when we have the first solutions, we see how much we can transfer to you. That's a good thing. This is funded by the ministry. It's German, European money, and we all profit from it, benefit from it to have a better progress. Thank you.
Just to add something, once again, when we started to work with the wine register, we get it examples from Germany, because some of the experts through the GIZ, we get it, we started, but still we didn't finish. Some of the issue, especially like experimental fields, wine laboratory, wine cataster, wine register, controlling wine, we achieve, but I saw some of the issue. What we need definitely to fulfill, we need maybe more details to finalize and to establish full system of the functioning. Once again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bekim, also for the positive feedback already at this point. I see that Lutz van Elk is also raising his hand.
Hello, Peggy. Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Peggy, and the speakers for organizing the meeting and sharing all the information. Well, with the digital gloves, the meaning of handmade will change. But from my perspective, not only this will change, digitalization will change the world. And therefore, I recommend to look on the potential of the digitalization, not on the obstacles, but on the potential, and get familiar with it as soon as possible. Well, in Germany, the German wine sector is in a very good position at the moment, but well, this might change, and we have to face that we are far behind the top of the world. Look at the infrastructure. Look at the application. Just let me say Tesla or Silicon Valley. We are far behind this. And I think we will get a new standard, and the standard will be above the standard we've got now. And if the sector is not using the digitalization, they will, for example, Professor Fischer explained it quite very well, they will drown in a documentation. But if you turn it around, then the digitalization can help the sector to keep up with all the new let me say, the new standard for higher food standards, for higher quality, higher food safety standards. So I'm very thankful that you managed to organize the meeting, and congratulations. Thank you very much, Peggy.